to this morning's committee meeting. My name is Herb Wesson, and I'm fortunate to be the chair of this committee. It's my understanding I do have a colleague that's en route, so Mr. City Attorney, we do not have a quorum, so we will operate, or the actions taken will be communiques from the chair. And with that said, let's get it started. So, if you could read, I think we take up some consent items. If we could read items 3, start with item 3.
Okay. Item 3, CRA and CLA reports relative to the establishment of a community market conversion program for convenience store rehabilitation.
Okay, on item 3, we'll adopt the CLA report. I will ask you to read item 4, even though we will continue that item.
CRA report and CAO2 report relative to authority to execute agreements for the rehabilitation and expansion of a manufacturing site at 6800 Avalon Boulevard.
Okay, on that item, we will continue it. We've just been joined by my friend and colleague, Councilmember Jan Perry. That brings us to item 5.
CRA report and resolution and CLA report relative to an agreement with the Salvadoran American Leadership and Educational Fund in an amount not to exceed $100,000 for the construction of the Archbishop Oscar Romero Plaza at MacArthur Park.
Okay, then we'll adopt the CLA report on item 5, bringing us to item 6.
Motion Cardenas Alarcon relative to authority to submit grant applications to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for lead hazard control and healthy homes grant programs and to execute a professional services contract for grant writing.
Okay. Since they're both on this committee, it makes sense to me that we adopt this. What do you think? It's okay. And Ms. Perry says it's okay. So with Ms. Perry's okay, we will adopt the motion on item 6. So, Mr. City Attorney, all of these actions will be communiques from the chair unless and until we get another member of this committee. That brings us to items 1 and 2. I think we should bring both of these people up together since it's the same commission. So if you could read those items.
Item 1 and 2, communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Mr. Ramon Munoz and Ms. Paula Leftwich to the Rent Adjustment Commission for terms ending May 20th, 2014.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's been a while.
4 years, I think. Good morning.
About that.
About, yes.
Okay, you know what? Why don't we start by, we basically know you guys, and this is not a new appointment, it's a reappointment. Yes. So I was thinking maybe you could talk about your plans for the next 4 years, and do you have any changes that you're going to recommend or discuss? So those would be my only questions. So you could tell us a little bit about why you want to continue to serve, even though we're very glad that you have decided. But any new things? What are your plans? And are there suggestions of how things could be altered? And we could start with Ms. Leftwich.
Thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here this morning and to be up for reappointment and to serve the City of Los Angeles as well as my councilmatic district 8, and I also lived in 10 for many, many years.
Come back.
I am happy to have served on the RAC Commission for about 15 years now, and I am always happy to serve our district, which is heavily populated, as most of you know. I would like to see in our district, of course, and throughout the city, more rentals for our population, and also look at seniors, as our population is aging very quickly with the baby boomers retiring, and So my thrust would be to look out for our seniors, to look out for more rentals in our area. And on the commission as well, we have been revamping and restructuring some of our ordinances, which have been slightly outdated, and we're trying to bring them current. And I'm just happy to be up for reappointment and to serve our city and our district again. And it's always a pleasure to see you, Chairman Wesson.
Thank you. Ramon?
Well, first of all, the thanks needs to be given to you for the work that you're doing, because without your work, no one will be here, especially within the Housing Committee. We do need to work a lot on the revamping of the ordinance, because, as Paula said, some of them are outdated or obsolete. So that's an ongoing. Every meeting, the Internal Review Committee has the task of revamping, reviewing, adjusting each one of the ordinance. This keeps everything where it needs to be, instead of operating in the past or operating in the dark. We do consult with different cities on different ordinances to see what other cities are doing in regards to certain issues that come up periodically.
How would you compare us with other cities?
There is no comparison. LA is the best city in the nation. That's my belief. Lived in the 1st District, and a strong believer of the people of the city of Los Angeles. The way I see things, there's two things. There are people who live in the city, but then there are people who believe in the city. And we're blessed with a lot of people who believe in what our city can be, and what our city is, and what future we have for our city. We're believers. Not just people who are here passing, not people who are here just one step to the next. No. Deep roots for the city of Los Angeles. That's what's made it the greatest city. And I'm not just saying this to say this is something that I strongly believe. And speaking with my neighbors in the community, we have that same belief. This is our town. This is our city. This is who we are.
Now, you know, you've been on the commission for a while, so now you come in as a seasoned veteran. What do you think will be different, given the fact that you have, you know, now a level of expertise that you didn't have before?
Well, let me throw one thing. One of the issues we come across is, when we have the issues with the REAP program and so forth, one of the issues that come up is one department may not be coordinating with a different department in regards to getting signatures to sign off on projects which have been fixed. So that person may have the project finished, or the repairs done, which are needed to be done, but yet there's no sign off on it. And by the time it comes to us, then the person may have all the things done, but there was no official sign off. There needs to be greater communications with each one of the different areas to make things run a lot smoother. And this is something that's come up to us a couple of times this year. But there needs to be more coordination with all the different areas which are related in regards to what we do.
Well, as I said before, I'm always looking into more housing for seniors. And since they will be on a fixed income, I'm hoping that I can learn a lot more about that area, and looking at how we would get apartment buildings that would, even if they set aside so many units as they do in multi-structured units where it's retail and living quarters, if we could set aside so many. I've just thought about this often.
Have you had a chance to see or go by Rosa Parks Villas?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's
I would love to do that.
it's a Crenshaw and the 10 freeway.
Oh, right,
Used to be a giant mound for years of nothing.
right.
It's now a 63 senior units.
So that's one thing. And the other thing is looking at so many of the apartments, or many apartments that are converting into condos. That's going around through the city with developers coming in. As a lifelong resident, I was born and raised in California, born and raised right here in Los Angeles at Olympic and Hobart.
Okay.
So I've seen the housing change in that Olympic Hobart area. Then I lived at 22nd Street in Vermont to see how that changed. And then Cloverdale and Olympic, which is your district.
Yes.
For many, many years, and knew Council Member Perry from way back in the day. So I just would like to see as many changes as we can possibly handle in this city. And I know it's not easy with the economic times not as good as it had been.
Well, I just want to thank both of you for your continuing service to see if, and then see if Ms. Perry might want to ask a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a suggestion that both of you seem to be very aware of the need for more rental housing in the city, and just if you could continue to extol the virtues and the advantages of building affordable rental housing. I'm gonna sneeze.
Bless you.
Throughout the city, not everybody builds it, and
Not everybody has one.
builds affordable
Right.
rental housing throughout the city. I have 3 new projects on Central Avenue and more to come. Some of it's family housing, some of it's 55 and over, and all of it's mixed income. And I believe in mixed income, so you don't create economic ghettos. But if you could encourage people in other parts of the city to be receptive to that and to pursue that, I think that would be really helpful, because every community needs housing to stabilize people who are on fixed incomes or who are disabled or making transitions from one lifestyle to another, or for people who are just starting out. It's the same no matter where you go.
Okay, we've been joined by Councilmember Tony Cardenas, so we do have a quorum at this point in time. Mr. Cardenas, did you want to ask a question or two of these two commissioners?
Thank you for your service. We need it.
Thank you so much.
Okay, then without objection, we will recommend the both of you to the full council today at 10 in the council chambers. And again, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
All righty.
And thank you for your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
do you want me to knock out 8 in like 2 seconds?
Yeah. Before we do that, let's do, since we have Mr. Cardenas. Mr. Cardenas, we did items 3, 4, 5, and 6, but we didn't have a quorum. If you don't have any problems with those items.
Did item 4 get continued, or?
Yeah, item 4 was continued.
So you're talking about?
I'm sorry, 3, 5, and 6.
I concur.
Okay. So those will be actions of this full committee and not a communique of the chair. With that said, I'm going to ask if you'd read item number 8, and then I will turn it over to Ms. Perry.
Item number 8, motion Perry Reyes and CLA report relative to the status of the Concerto project located at 9th and Figueroa Streets.
Okay.
I have one public comment card on that.
Oh, okay.
Brenda Rodriguez.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Brenda Rodriguez on behalf of the developer, Astani Enterprises. And first, I would like to just thank Council Members Perry and Reyes for taking an interest in this issue, which affects, downtown community, as well as all the working families that were displaced by the FJC in Starwood. And I did want to mention there was one item on the report that I want to clarify, and that is on the last paragraph on the CLA report. And it refers to ongoing negotiations and between Starwood, FDIC, and Astani Enterprises, and reaching a tentative agreement. Just so that you know, there has been no tentative agreement reached between the developer and Starwood/FDIC. In fact, there has been no dialogue between the two since May, maybe June of this year. And of course, I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Okay, with that said, Ms. Perry?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I introduced this motion to shed light on a very complicated situation involving the FDIC that has caused the construction of the Concerto project to come to a standstill. The delayed construction and finishing Concerto has resulted in the loss of more than 250 union jobs with a payroll of $30 million. Now, I think it's critical for the federal and local government to work cooperatively, and I would appreciate support in adopting the resolution included in the CLA report, because adoption of that resolution will include Concerto and its issues in the city's 2009-2010, or I guess would be 2010-2011 now, federal legislative program, and allow the city to engage the FDIC, because I'm sure this is not the only situation like this. And I felt that it was really important because we put a lot of people out of work. The project's almost done and we can't get it finished.
Well, I would absolutely not have a problem with that whatsoever. And, you know, you have a certain expertise and a creativity, and somehow these challenging projects, you seem to get them done. So I would follow your lead on this without a doubt. So if there are no objections on that item, we'll adopt the CLA report. That brings us to item 7.
Item 7, LA Housing Department and CAO reports relative to a report back on outreach contractors for rent escrow account and utility maintenance programs, and authority to issue a request for proposals to procure outreach services tailored toward property owners.
So I had a card for this item, but they've changed their mind. Well, Larry? You're pulling it. No, well, you can come in if you want to. Just give it to the clerk.
Good morning, Larry Gross, Coalition for Economic Survival. We support the proposal before you. REAP is essential to the city's effective war on slum housing. But REAP won't be as effective without these REAP outreach contracts, and the current outreach groups are the most qualified to do this job. The LAHD and CAO reports clearly document that the contracts are far and beyond the most cost-effective approach to providing these vital services, and doing it in a way that doesn't reduce these important services. And this clearly is an important factor as we face our budget crisis. These contracts also, I understand, have the city attorney's approval, as they'll tell you, as the contracts now ensure that there is no conflict of interest involved, as some falsely have claimed. Let me state that these charges on the conflict of interest come from those who don't want to see slumlords held accountable. And while we support adding the landlord outreach contract, even though it's going to cost us a reduction in our contracts, we would strongly urge that the council direct staff that the groups who are picked, or group that's picked for this contract, be fully supportive of the city program and don't have a history of trying to dismantle and eliminate it, as well as ensuring that this group doesn't have any key officials who are representing and supporting major slumlords, which is the main target of this REAP program, because that surely would be a conflict of interest. The effective commitment the city has to fighting this slum housing must continue, and that could be best demonstrated by approving this program and contract before you. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to ask a question now?
Yeah, I just want to ask the city attorney.
Why don't you let me let the other gentleman
Okay.
speak? And then, of course, you can. Steve Arredondo?
Yes, Steve Arredondo with the Los Angeles Center for Law and Justice. We also ask that this committee move the report and send it to the council and approve it. And we ask in doing that they recall the over decade-long history of success that REAP has had in moving property, substandard properties to habitable, and the resulting increase to the tax base that has caused. I also remind this committee that REAP pays for itself at a cost benefit to the city of Los Angeles, contrary to earlier criticisms of the program. Also, with the additional contractor to work with landlords, I believe any perceived criticism of conflict of interest should be addressed. I'd also like to point out that even though there have been prior criticisms of conflict of interest, I have yet to see any specific verifiable case pointed out by those critics. Nonetheless, this recommendation for an additional contractor to work with landlords should address those issues, and we ask that the report be moved forward.
Okay, stay there for 1 second, and before Ms. Perry asks a question, I'm curious about something that you were doing. Okay, who were you looking at? The two empty chairs.
No, I was looking at...
I just wanted to see, and I kept looking.
Well, I was looking partly at the clock.
That's good. You're quick on your feet. Okay, thank you both.
Stay within the
And if
time.
we could have the department people come forward.
Okay.
Good morning. It's my understanding that Ms. Perry
Yeah.
has at least a question or two for the city attorney.
Yeah, is one of you the city attorney? No?
I
Yeah.
just met today.
Great. Tell me how we have corrected or amended the situation so that we do have a proper conflict check process in place.
Okay, with respect to the issue of conflict of interest, I want to be clear that the city attorney's office never opined that a conflict of interest existed. We merely responded to the allegation of a conflict of interest and worked with the housing.
But wouldn't it be normal standard and practice to, in any time we issue an RFP and we get respondents and the respondents are chosen, that we would do a conflict check on them before the final decision would be made?
Absolutely, and as I'm prepared now to respond to your question, pursuant to council direction, my office worked with the housing department, and specifically with respect to your question, it's my understanding, based on the work that the housing department has done since we last met, was they've revised their written policies and procedures to provide further clarification of the practices that have been previously implemented, but to provide more clarity with respect to the roles and responsibilities of the outreach contractors as contrasted with the responsibilities of the inspectors, to clarify more specifically that the removal of properties from REAP lies within, and the correction of code violation rests on the independent decision of the housing department inspectors. So the housing department can speak more directly, specifically with the policies and procedures, and I believe there are some addenda items to the attachment to the council submittals. In addition, it's my understanding that the housing department has already engaged in training with not only in-house staff at the housing department, but has also engaged in staff with the independent contractors to again reiterate and underline and to clarify the roles and responsibilities with respect to the REAP program.
I have a question for you then. What does conflicts check and also include any past litigation against the city within a time frame?
That is not a matter that I looked at independently, but I would tell you this. It's my understanding that the independent contractors do have, some of them do have attorneys that, and legal services that they provide. Within the parameters of an attorney practicing in the state of California, we do have a professional code of conduct, which mandates that all attorneys engage regularly in routine conflict checks. So the answer would be in the affirmative, and it would be the expectation that that would have been done previously and would be done presently and prospectively, and that that is a duty that the contractors do have.
Okay, so the responsibility to disclose that would be on the contractors, then it wouldn't be the responsibility of the city to discern whether or not we had been sued by anybody who might have been chosen. Is that what you're saying?
No, I didn't say the second part of what you
All
said.
right, tell me what you're saying then.
I'm saying
Whose
that
responsibility it is if contractor X gets chosen by the city of Los Angeles to be a part of this program, and they've sued the city within the last, say, 12 to 24 months, is it their responsibility to disclose that to us, or is it our responsibility to figure that out?
having been asked a question I have not previously contemplated and not being the conflict attorney for the city, I would ask permission to report back to you on that specific issue so that I can be sure that the advice that I give you or the statement that I give is appropriate.
That's fine. Depending on the chair, maybe if we want to go forward to council. I would like to get that answer, though, because for me, that's a very important question for me.
And can you just restate the question then?
Yeah, basically, I'll give it to you as an example. We go through this process of selection, and we select a number of contractors, and let's say contractor ABC has sued the city, say, within 12 to 36 months prior to selection. I need to know whose responsibility it is to factor that in. Is it the responsibility of the entity that has been selected, or is it the responsibility of the city to find that out? And basically, is it their responsibility to disclose, or is it our responsibility to do a conflicts check that is in depth enough that we can discover that information? And if it is determined that that has taken place, how does that factor into how we select a contractor?
Okay, very clear.
Whether or not we continue to work with that particular agency, have we settled with them? Have they gotten money from the city of Los Angeles? Type of lawsuit? Those kinds of things.
Okay.
Basically, I mean...
That was broader than what I contemplated. I'm glad you provided that clarification.
I mean, basically, do you go ahead and then hire somebody who just got done suing you, like, in the last 2 years?
Okay, so not only...
And basically, whether they cost you money or not, and, how do you feel about that? I can tell you how I feel about it. I feel highly uncomfortable. But, that's why I raise it. And I'd love to have an answer when we get to council.
Okay, and as I contemplate your question now, it's not only with respect to conflicts as between the contractors and the city, but conflicts that what I initially interpreted your question as is conflicts, because the issue that I understand that's been raised previously is conflicts that exist between the contractors and either the tenant or the landlord.
Well, I'm not as worried about that as I am about us making stupid decisions. Us, the city, making a stupid selection, and then we turn around and find out, wow, we just paid a settlement to that entity for, X amount of dollars 18 months ago, I just want to make sure our conflicts checks are thorough and in-depth and are substantive.
So,
Very good.
I mean, Mr. Gross's comment about not caring about getting slumlords, I thought was rather conclusory, as I think what you would say in law school. But whatever, you're entitled to whatever you want to say. But I think the city does a pretty good job of going after slumlords, and I think they will continue to do so. And I believe it's always been a high priority. And I've enjoyed a number of successes in my own district that I know throughout South Los Angeles. So I think that statement is gratuitous in some cases. But nonetheless, it did open the door to prompt me to want to dig a little deeper on the issue of conflict analysis on our part. Because I think we need to be highly responsible on our side of that equation to make sure that we've done in-depth analysis.
Okay, so in the, before I turn this over to Mr. Cardenas, as we move forward, if we move forward with this item, we will do it with the understanding that by the time this item goes to council, that you will have the answers to the concerns voiced by Ms. Perry. With that said, Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you. Now, these contracts, can somebody describe to me what the contracted organization would actually be doing for the city? What would be their activity that would play out?
Roya Babazadeh, Los Angeles Housing Department. Are you making reference to the existing contractors or the RFP that we are going to have contract in place to serve landlords?
The one to serve landlords.
The purpose of this contract would be to have a program, outreach program, designed specifically to serve the needs of the landlords. At this point, we do have contracts in place that the contractors serve both tenants and landlords, but their scope of work is broad. And it was brought to our attention that landlords would need more specific outreach to identify what are their needs and target them specifically for that. This contract is going to provide information about RIP and AMP program to them. It's going to, contractor is going to provide them with the rights and their responsibilities, what are the violations on the property, define it to them if it's not clear to them, provide them with references or places that they can get services and make the improvements, specific outreach for the landlords.
Okay. Now, basically, the outreach to the landlords is to help them understand their responsibilities?
Exactly, yes.
In effect, if landlords are trying to be responsible and we educate them, in effect, basically what we're trying to do is make sure that the problems correct themselves by them following their responsibilities, and therefore they're not in violation, hopefully, which means when a landlord is in violation, that means a tenant or tenants are actually suffering or being egreged. So rather than wait till something happens, this part of the contracting outreach is to make sure that landlords understand. Now, after we educate them and they choose to egregious the tenants or what have you and not follow the rules, then that's a different story. And obviously, when we inspect or when we find out that they violated the tenants' rights, then we'll find them in violation and do what we have to do, correct?
Correct. When landlords are knowledgeable about the violations, housing code violations, and what they need to do, our expectation is that the improvements are done much faster and the case can be closed, and by this way the place is going to be habitable for the tenants and also maintained to the benefit of the landlord.
Okay, and some of these organizations, they tend to be, the people who apply tend to be not-for-profit organizations. Is it excluded to not-for-profit organizations? What is the parameters of who can apply to take this responsibility?
We haven't identified specific to be nonprofit. For-profit can apply for that as long as it's a community-based organization in a way that they have a background serving communities, they have a background serving landlords, they have experience in outreach services, and they can provide information on the quality of the work that they performed. And there are criteria on the schedule of, in the RFP to identify what we look at, and those are general standards that are going to be broken down into more details to analyze the past performance, quality of the services that they are going to provide, and their ability to carry on the services that they are proposing.
Now, I'm almost done, Chairman. In the process of looking at the organizations that actually apply to render these services, do we ask any questions, or do we figure out whether or not the applicants perhaps have been, in some cases, very antagonistic toward landlords, for example, picketing in front of apartment complexes, suing landlords more than anything else as far as their day-to-day activity, things of that nature? Do we look into that, the flavor of what their practices in the community, as you described, have been before they take on this responsibility?
But I'm assuming at this point, I haven't developed the detail of the criteria we are going to analyze, but definitely we are going to look into their experience and their line of work, what they are doing, and if they are not in line of serving the community, serving the constituents, or in line of supporting the program.
You already described that. My point is, there are organizations out there who consider themselves as serving the community. And then what they do, for example, is they get orange T-shirts and they bombard the council and say, rah, 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 these landlords are also lords or what have you. And then they go out in the streets and they put out emails and they put pamphlets or what have you, and they just bombard landlords and then try to depict some of them as being, the devil incarnate. Now, if an organization is fraught with that kind of activity, like perhaps in the last 18 months or what have you, and then all of a sudden we give them the responsibility of educating landlords, how are we going to hold them accountable that they're actually taking off that activism extreme hat and putting on their other hat and saying, my job is to be nice to these landlords and be their teacher, instead of just sitting out there saying that I hate you and all you do is hurt people and all you do is make people suffer, etc. And I say those things because I've seen organizations talk like that. I've seen organizations right here in City Hall, right here in downtown Los Angeles, actually act like that on a daily basis. And they're not-for-profit organizations. Obviously, they can prove that they've been active in the community. Obviously, they can prove that they know that area. I mean, they hang out there every single day. They're visible. They're activists, etc. But then again, we're going to allow ourselves to hire an organization like that, and we're going to believe that they're actually going to go and just be nice to these landlords and say, look, man, you better just get it right to begin with. You just need to understand the rules and follow the rules.
If I may respond to that, Councilmember. Roberto Aldape from the Housing Department. I think the item that you raised is the real purpose, or one of the reasons...
And whether it's orange T-shirts or yellow T-shirts or what have you.
I understand that. Is one of the reasons why we came forward with the RFP for a landlord outreach services, to dispel that, or to disallow that type of discussion from going on. But within the RFP process, there are eligible proposal requirements, and one has been, a couple of them have not been determined to be non-responsible or been debarred by the city pursuant to contract responsibility ordinance. So within the RFP, there are criteria set forth in terms of eligible proposals. But the reason why the discussion that you just had is the reason why we went forward, or coming forward to this body, to come up with a outreach services for landlords.
Well, I thought I was done earlier, but my last point, Chairman, and the reason why I say that is because the way I read it right now, it is somewhat subjective as to whether or not somebody will disqualify themselves or be disqualified because of such activity that seems to be extremely one-sided when it comes to how they came to fruition of knowing the community, serving the community, being active in the community, which is part of the criteria of being qualified. But I think we have to be careful is that I believe that that's preventative medicine. To educate landlords is probably the best thing we can do. It's their last chance to get their act together, or their last chance to say, you know what, maybe I don't know the rules to the minutiae and the detail that they are today, because we change the rules every year. And they get a little stricter and a little tighter. Thank God for the tenants. But at the same time, I think the best medicine for making sure that people are in livable conditions and they're not being aggrieved by their landlords is for the landlords to understand. And that I agree that we should have educators for the landlords. I don't feel sorry for the landlords. It's for the objective of making sure that people are not egregious, that people are not punished for living in a certain building.
We don't disagree, and just to follow up on Council Member Perry's comment, we believe we do a good service to the State of Los Angeles in terms of code enforcement. Can we be better? Absolutely. Are we trying to be better? Absolutely.
Sure, if we gave you more resources, you could do a lot more, right?
Absolutely. And to that, in terms of education of landlords, as you folks know, we are embarking on a citywide landlord-tenant outreach program. We have a contractor in place. We're developing the proposal, which we'll be submitting back to this committee for your review and approval. And that purpose of that is to do the outreach, to educate these landlords and their other responsibilities, and to educate the tenants of their rights. In addition to that, we have the boots on the ground every day. We have 120 inspectors that are out on the ground that are educating property owners in terms of how to improve their property so as to avoid, if you will, the REAP syndrome. And so we believe we are embarking in that type of endeavor to educate property owners as well.
Thank you.
Okay. With that said, then I'll recommend that without objection, we will move forward with this item with the understanding that the concerns raised by Ms. Perry will be addressed by the time this goes to council. And it's also my understanding that, Ms. Sauer, we have an additional amendment. Would you like to read that?
That is correct, sure. It is to the language in the RFP on page 8 of page 52 of the RFP, under letter J, evaluation criteria, areas 1 and 2, rather than saying understanding of, the amendment is to change the language to demonstrated commitment to. And that's again for areas 1 and 2 under the evaluation criteria on page 8 of the RFP.
Okay, so we'll adopt the CAO report as amended. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any, in fact, Russ, you get new glasses? Okay, I just want you to know, I know my people. Something was different.
Oh, man.
Anyway, is there any more business before this committee?
No, sir.
Then this committee is adjourned.